Well, I was on a walk today and I was thinking, is Max Verstappen the greatest of all time? I just had this thought that come to my mind. The reason being, I was just reflecting, you know, when you go outside for a walk and all of these thoughts come your way that you wouldn't normally think about. I was thinking, is Max the greatest of all time? It's a fair question because he's won championships without the best car, namely 2021 and 2024. It can't just be about numbers. It can't just be the 7 titles that Hamilton's won, for example, with the best car. But most of those, it's got to be considering when you don't have the best car. And that thought just crossed my mind at lunch, and I thought, well, he's done everything he could have done with every car he's possibly had. And his pole position today was a case for that argument that Max Verstappen is the greatest of all time, still writing his story. But the pole position in Suzuka, one of the most technical tracks, in a car that ostensibly has been nowhere this season, and Max has been dragging it, kicking and screaming to the front of the grid. I think this was a champion's pole position. If you're interested in what my thoughts are, the full practice 3 and qualifying analysis, definitely keep watching. Welcome back to the channel, guys. My name is Martin, specialist technical coach and mentor for open Formula drivers. Let's park that greatest of all time discussion. We might have to come back to that another day. I think Schumacher and Max are in there because they've done it more times with not the best cars, as opposed to potentially Hamilton, who's had best cars for most of his career and done it more often than not as well. Let's kick off with FP2. Now, following on from FP2, I made the point that Jack really threw the car into turn 1 unnecessarily with a lot of steering lock, and I wasn't sure at that point whether or not it was DRS or not. A lot of you guys came out in the comments and helped me out and said, yes, this was DRS open. You can tell by the little green lights on the left of the dash. You get one when you're within 1 second and DRS is available. You get another green light when you are allowed to therefore activate the DRS, and when you do activate it, then all of these other green lights pop up. And then he turned in without the DRS. Interesting, they asked him afterwards when he got kicked out in Q1. It was a good question by Craig Slater. He said, you know, there's rumor that you were doing this in the simulator, that is trying to take turn 1 flat, and we're taking it flat successfully. So was this the plan, or did you actually genuinely forget? Interestingly enough, Jack didn't answer it. He goes, oh, with respect, I prefer not to say. And I don't know what that does for you. I don't know what it does for you and for your advantage if you don't say. You could say, yeah, we were trying it in the sim and it worked and it didn't work and we have to recalibrate. Or you can say, no, look, it was just genuine mistake. I forgot. I guess now that I'm thinking it out loud, the latter is probably true. He's probably embarrassed to say that it was a genuine mistake. But there you go. Look, thanks for helping me out with the lights. I always thought you got the beep in the ear. Maybe you get both, or every team has something different, I guess. Different lights and beep, or just beep, or whatever. So there you go, DRS left open by Jack. And again, just following on from FP2, we had the full wind change 180 for today. That means a tailwind into turn 1, a tailwind into the Esses, a tailwind braking into Degner 2, crucially as well. That's where we saw a lot of mistakes in practice. So kicking off FP3, another grass fire. So they're continuing to happen. I said yesterday, I don't know how they're going to solve for this. I'm glad it's not my problem. They continue to happen. I think they will continue to happen unless we get rain tomorrow morning. Obviously that's going to help the whole situation out as well. But just as we look ahead now to the race, I'm going to skip a few steps ahead. If we're getting grass fires or rain, we're potentially going to get rain or fire tomorrow. So the strategists have to be thinking about that. What's the chance now? Because there's another element that doesn't normally come into it. What's the chance that a fire happens? And if it does happen, on what part of the lap or track or what phase in the Grand Prix? You got 20 F1 cars pounding around there with their titanium skid blocks full of fuel, mind you, so they're going to be really bottoming out. The chance of an early safety car due to a grass fire is something and needs to be considered in the strategy. So I thought I'd call that out now, as didn't really have an impact in practice and quali, but if it happens in the race, it's going to be strategically significant. So that's something they're going to need to take into account. So like I say, a lot of guys struggling to get the nose into Degner 2. It's turn 9 on my track map. And then a lot of guys also struggling with exit oversteer, even if they did make it into into turn 9, Degner 2. The guys that I saw in practice struggling, the McLaren drivers, Piastri and Norris, struggled on 3 occasions to get the nose into Degner 2. We had Doohan struggle as well to get the nose into Degner 2. And then in quali, we saw Hamilton have a slide there. I think Bortoleto a slide there as well. So yeah, really important that tailwind was having those implications. So the braking distance was increased into Degner 2. You got to pull back with the gears a lot more. If previously you were taking the corner at, I don't know, say 150 apex speed, you got to spend more time braking the car. Take it now at 140. And that's how you're going to get through Degner 2. Some really strange race engineering from the stake team, Gabby Bortoleto's team. He had a big oversteer on exit of Degner 2, and his engineer comes on the radio and says, we've seen a big time loss and big opportunity at turn 9. And typical race engineer, you know, they got their head so far in the laptop that they feel the need to say there's a lap time loss opportunity through Degner 2 when it was clear, like Gabby had a slide through that corner. I don't think it was necessary to say that. You guys know my thoughts on this. The race engineering role just needs to be one of empathy and communication, delivering the right information at the right time, no more and no less. And I think this just didn't need to be said. So Davidson also agreed with me in commentary. I think he called it out by saying like it just doesn't need to be said. Then we had the bad mistake as well from Gabby Bortoleto looking across at the entry into 130R and putting the right side of his car on the grass in the entry. He thought it was like a tire blowout or some sort of tire failure, so it definitely caught him by surprise. He wasn't aware. Similar to what Alonso did yesterday on the entry to Degner 1. Again, the radio engineer responds, "We don't see anything on the data. Everything looks normal. Not sure what happened." So again, it's another case of engineers just not putting their feet on the ground, like touching the ground and feeling reality. I think it's a broader conversation for another day. And it's a shame, really. The sport has gone so much in the direction of data to the extent that they can't just look at like the onboard or see what's happening like in reality. Like it's weird. Yeah, like I say, big conversation for another day. But normally you'd go into the data when you don't understand. You've got to take a top-down approach, right? Check the onboard, talk to the driver. If you don't understand it from the onboard or talking to the driver or watching the car around the track, next step is data. Next step, go from there. Do you know what I mean? Then go into the detail from there. 9 times out of 10, if you just look at what's going on from the onboard, you'll pick it up straight away. So that's a shame that the engineers are that out of touch with the reality. We spoke about it with Ferrari race operations. Last year it was McLaren race operations. It's a continual spiral, like race to the bottom, I think, in terms of race engineering. And it's a shame. I think we've got to pull it, like, for the sport's professionalism and the sake of maintaining quality in the sport. I think the lens has to shift away a little bit from the data and more towards just actual what's happening. If you're that data inclined and that data driven, you probably ought to be designing the car in the wind tunnel and just like make sure you just pay attention to the models on the wind tunnel. I think the racetrack is a place for a little bit more practicality. Anyway, that's just my opinion. I could talk about it for a long time, and I won't go further than that. They asked Andy Cowell, did Fernando, they had him actually live, Andy Cowell from Aston Martin, context. And I think it was Crofty to Andy Cowell on the pit wall during practice. They asked him, did Fernando make a mistake into Degner 1 or was it a car issue? This is yesterday when he went off in practice 2. Andy responds that we had a lot of bouncing between turns 7 and 8 in the car, and Fernando was obviously pushing on that lap, and so yeah. And I just thought, again, like, why can't we just say, yeah, he made a mistake and put the tire on the grass? Like, even when I came out and said in my Melbourne video that Alonso was on the wrong line, too much steering lock, too much throttle, and that's why he went off in Melbourne, a lot of the comments on my socials like TikTok and Instagram were like, what are you talking about? Fernando's a 2-time world champion. And there seems to be this massive like they look at these drivers with so much respect, like they're superhuman. And take it from me, guys, they're not superhuman. They're human like all of us. They make mistakes. Yeah, they do some god tier things from time to time, particularly Fernando, Max now as well. But doesn't mean that they're perfect, and doesn't mean that they're not mistake prone. Doesn't mean they're going to do clumsy stuff from time to time as well. I just feel like we should be admitting when it's just he put a wheel on the grass. And why does it need to be? Why do we need to talk about the car bouncing between turn 7 and 8? It's got nothing to do with it. So very strange. Even if you watch Peter Windsor's channel, he was talking about Fernando's positive steering input. And that's going back to 2005, 2006. Again, he didn't admit that this was just a wheel on the grass situation. So I hope if you come to this channel, you're just going to get it how it is, right? I'm not going to sugarcoat or mask anything. That was a wheel on the grass and deserved to be treated as such. I'm surprised in FP3 Andy Cowell didn't call that one out. Okay, so really interesting piece of track that George Russell was using. So let's get on to some good pieces of driving here. Check this out, guys. I'll bring this up on the screen for you as well. And this was George in the practice session. He's driving beautifully all weekend, and he's managed to find, and a few other drivers found it as well. I think the only other one I saw doing it to this extent was Alex Albon in the Williams. But George has managed to find, this is the entry to Spoon, managed to find this green piece of track and turning in beautifully into Spoon. It is a corner and it is a track where I do recommend finding extra track width on entry where possible. You wouldn't want to be doing this on long corners of constant radius like in Hungary and Netherlands. That lends itself more towards the tight line. Again, I don't want to go too techie at this point, but yeah, skinny track width, old school circuit, Suzuka, Spoon curve, high speed, double apex, totally different situation. Yeah, why not? Open the track, open up your entry, allow you to carry more speed into the corner. And this is beautiful driving by George. So he's got the car flat, square, stable, all good. He's looking across at the apex to Spoon. You can see where he is on the track map here, entering into the first part of Spoon. And you can see his car positioning here. I thought it was a beautiful piece of driving, and I thought I'd call that out. That was all I really saw do it, other than Alex Albon as well. So I thought I'd call that out as a little detail, a little feather in the cap of George Russell, who's been going good guns this weekend. Worth noting at this point just how much Kimi Antonelli has been struggling this weekend, and he pulled it together somehow in qualifying, so kudos to him for that. But these are the FP3 results. So we had a 1-2, McLaren 1-2, so ostensibly they got the quickest machine out here this weekend. A Russell there a 10th behind, doing an amazing job. Best middle sector. And then if we just scroll down, so that's a 28 dead for Russell. It's a 29-1 for Kimi Antonelli. He's been struggling massively all weekend. So that's something I thought I'd call out as just the change that he went through between FP3 and qualifying is significant and notable. The other thing I wanted to call out was the top speeds. Max Verstappen 295 and Yuki Tsunoda 294. I'll be keen to see if they adjusted that for qualifying. Max obviously getting an amazing pole. Surely he wasn't carrying a 5 kilometer top speed deficit. And I think Ted Kravitz noted as well that Tsunoda was running significantly more rear wing than Max Verstappen as well. So we'll get onto the speeds in just a second as we head into qualifying. Okay, so let's talk about Q1 now. And following on from Kimi Antonelli, I'm just going to talk about a little bit insight that Ted gave us in Q1 on Kimi Antonelli's first run. Apparently he wasn't getting enough temperature during the first sector to be able to do a good job in the next part of the lap. I didn't fully get that, to be honest. I'm not sure if it was a warm-up thing for the first sector or if he wasn't using the tires properly in the first sector and then getting better outcomes later on in the lap. That being said, in Q1, I just want to highlight to you guys a perfect example of how to take the final chicane, or any chicane for that matter. Kimi Antonelli, a beautiful piece of driving on his second run in Q1, absolutely nailed the final chicane. And he did it properly, he did it perfectly, he did it exactly how I said he should, connecting the unloaded inside front tire with as much curb as possible. But the car just remained perfectly settled. So he's managed to find a way to take a lot of curb and keep the car settled as well. Why and how? Well, Kimi's Italian, right? A lot of these Italian tracks, we're talking Monza, we're talking Imola, they're just like stacked with chicanes, right? Monza, you got first chicane, second chicane, and Ascari chicane. So you're looking at 3 chicanes in Monza. Imola, you've got the first one, Tamburello chicane. The one after that, Villeneuve chicane. And then you've got Variante Alta, the long chicane in the middle. Both of these tracks, and Kimi lives not far from Imola, by the way, have a lot of chicanes, and chicanes are present here, 16 and 17, the final chicane in Suzuka. And if you guys are familiar with my 7 technical corners, you know that the technique you apply in, whether it's Imola's Variante Alta or the Ascari chicane in Monza, it's going to be the same approach for the final chicane in Suzuka. So it was beautiful. I can't share the video with you guys. I'm going to get copyright strike if I do. But if you do get a chance to have a look at it, and I want to have a look at it in detail as well, the final chicane, Kimi's second run in Q1, noteworthy. It's your example in how to take a chicane well. I think he managed to replicate it and do it again in Q2, but we'll talk about that a little bit later. But I thought that I'd call that out as a beautiful piece of driving. So we got George's entry into Spoon, Kimi Antonelli's final chicane as well. Just while we're on the final chicane, it was really interesting to see Hamilton and Alonso nowhere near the sort of quality that Antonelli was putting down in the final chicane. Hamilton missed the apex in Q1 altogether, so just went straight past his braking zone, turns in on the road and misses it altogether. And Alonso missed the curb, that inside green curb that Kimi was swallowing. I think Lando's chopping that all weekend as well. Alonso just kind of in between a Hamilton and an Antonelli, just taking a little bit of curb. But those guys, I think, got some work to do. They really got to make sure the inside front is as unloaded as possible. And this is before you make contact with the chicane curb, guys. Make sure that front inside tire is as unloaded as possible, and then connect it in with the curb. That's the way to do it, and that's the technique that Antonelli was doing so well. I thought I'd just create that juxtaposition as how Antonelli was doing it, 18 years of age, no world championships, versus Hamilton and Alonso, who I was watching, who messed up the chicane in Q1. So let's take a look at the Q1 results. Hopefully you can see that on the screen. There it is, guys, sticking out quite a lot. That's Antonelli in P8. And he's got the purple final sector, a 17.383. No one else in the 17.3s for the final sector in Q1. Good job, Kimi Antonelli. Bravo. Like that's quality. That's something that an understanding of technical corners, being chicanes, hairpins, Esses, and double apex corners, which we all have here in Suzuka, can really help you with. I'm going to talk about the Esses in a second as well, guys. So that's definitely one of the 7 technical corners and a very important part of this track. But there it is. So who did we get kicked out? Hulkenberg, Bortoleto, Lawson just scraping through, guys. So a good job, I guess, to get through. But as you could tell, he's kind of got his hands behind his back this weekend a little bit. Ocon was the most disappointing one for me. Ocon I rate fairly highly, and he was half a second off his teammate, so that's not a good qualifying from Ocon. He'll be disappointed with that. Doohan, he's had a disaster over a weekend. He missed FP1. He smashed the car in FP2. He's out in Q1. So this is the opposite of what I said in the Thursday preview show. If you joined me there, you would have heard Suzuka, like not a street circuit, but street circuit rule applies. Build yourself a weekend and put together the sessions and build and iterate. That's going to give you the best chance of having the best results come Sunday. Who's done that well and the best so far? Max Verstappen. And he said as much in his post-qualifying interview. He said, we've just been chipping away at it all weekend, and here we are. So good job. Jack Doohan did the opposite of that. And Lance Stroll, I'm not sure what happened to him. Oh, actually, I'm sure what happened to him. So into turn, let me bring up the whiteboard. Into turn 6, this one here, the final part of the S's before 7 is flat. I'll just zoom in so you guys can see that. He just got a bunch of wind come from behind the car, and as he's turned into 6, he's just got an oversteer moment and swapped. I've had a look at it. I don't like to normally say wind or bad luck and that sort of thing. But in this case, I've had a look at his onboard. It was bad luck. He didn't do anything wrong. He's literally just turned into the corner, not too quickly or anything. I haven't seen anything wrong with the steering. So hard luck for Lance. Looks like he got the biggest gust of wind on his final run in turn 6, and it's just pushed the rear of the car around. That means that he didn't get his final run in, and he was out in Q1. Let's have a quick look at the speeds as well. I wanted to just catch Verstappen and see if so he's 299 here on the right. The best is Russell still. Verstappen's teammate Tsunoda 296. He's carrying more wing, remember we said. So that's the worst, one of the worst top speeds is 296 in Tsunoda and Verstappen 299. So they're obviously struggling with aero efficiency because Max is still, I'm not doing 296. Like, you can forget it. I at least want to be in the mix, like get me close to 300, which is what some of the other guys, Ferrari have, Piastri's 301, Verstappen 299. He's probably saying like, I can't race with that. Like get me out of there 296, give me more straight line speed. And it's again, another example of Max just, he's dragging this car, kicking and screaming to a competitive position. So yeah, the biggest call out here was Antonelli's final sector and that he closed the gap to George Russell. 1/10 between the two of them. So good job to Kimi Antonelli. Hats off. He's done a good job in Q1 and unlucky for Lance Stroll and obviously not the best work from Esteban Ocon. For the Q1 telemetry, why don't we have a look at the Mercedes drivers? It's their 27.9, I believe. Give me a sec. I'll just bring it up. So the Q1 times was this one, the 27.9 and the 27.8. Just want to try to work out, like, obviously the onboard's going to be most telling, but I just want to try to work out what's happened here in the final chicane. Whenever the delta goes up, that's going to be in George Russell's favor. He finishes the lap 1/10 ahead. That's fine. And whenever the delta creeps down, that's in Antonelli's favor. And you see that happen in the final chicane. So he goes from 199, so almost 2/10 adrift of George into the final chicane. He exits the final chicane 117. So he's found about 3/4 of a tenth. So look, it's only one corner, but it's a mega job. Let's see if we can see anything in the telemetry. I'll be curious to see. So we've got Antonelli in white and we've got Russell in green. Wow, actually, I didn't expect that. Okay, so Russell's the one that's carried more speed in to the entry. He's broken later than Antonelli. You can see the break, the aqua, George is after Antonelli. So George braking later, carrying more speed into the chicane, but it looks like in the middle, he's got more work to do to try to slow the car down to take the right-hander. That looks like what's happened here. You can tell because Antonelli's the first one to full throttle in white and his exit speed is just huge. So Antonelli let me just draw this on the whiteboard for you guys. I'll show you guys what's happening here. So let me just move the Suzuka track. Okay, so if this is our final chicane, I'll just draw it on the right-hand side. The reason Antonelli's been able to bury the throttle quicker than George Russell, in my opinion, is because of, from what I saw in the telemetry, let's say this is Antonelli in orange, by him really swallowing this part of the chicane. Once you're here, the rest is a straight line traction event. Whereas if I show you what Hamilton was doing, for example, by going around this part, then you've got to put additional steering lock in to get through the next part, and that delays your exit. So it's really shortcutting the first part in order to get nice straight line run through the final part. So it's a beautiful piece of driving by Antonelli. Again, limited with how much I can show you with telemetry, but that's from what I saw and everything. And I really want to double check the onboard as well. But that's what's happening. I think he's straightened the whole chicane out. So yeah, like I say, good job there. Any other insight that I can give you? There was a big delta jump here in favor of George Russell. This looks like spoon curve. And remember, I showed you guys the shot of George Russell on the entry to spoon. Is it spoon? Yeah, it is. It's spoon. So if I just click my mouse back here, you guys will see that white dot. That correlates to the white line. And it's the entry speed once again. You see George carrying more throttle into the corner, more speed into the corner, everything on the entry. That's the shot that I gave you guys before. That's the extra track width that George is carrying into the first part of spoon. So it's good to see actually that what I'm seeing with my eyes is correlating to the data as well. So I hope that helps you guys and gives you guys an insight into where the lap time is being won and lost around this track. Okay, so Q2 results. Unfortunately, guys, Yuki Tsunoda is out and 15th and crucially out-qualified by Liam Lawson as well. This is a story that's going to run this weekend, I think now. Is it the car? Is it not the car? Was it Lawson? Was it Tsunoda? Here's the reality of the situation that I think is happening. I just think I think all the cars are challenging to drive in their own way. Obviously, the Red Bull's got a lot, I don't want to say a lot of front grip because it doesn't, but relative to its rear grip, you know, the rear of the car is just sliding around. I'm going to talk to you guys through Tsunoda's mistake at turn 1. But yeah, I just feel like Max has put that car on pole. So it's not that we're going to say it's a bad car. I just think Max is doing something different with his approach to the whole situation. And I'd be really keen to be in the team and embedded in that, just to be able to learn from how Max is extracting that lap time and why it's been so hard for the likes of Checo, Lawson, Tsunoda now, Ricciardo, anyone else that sits in that car just, you know, is struggling with it. And Tsunoda. So look, I was quite critical of Tsunoda's mentality coming into this car. He sat down on the Thursday press conference and he was asked the question, and the question said, Yuki, you're jumping into a very difficult, very mercurial Red Bull RB21. Do you need to change your driving style for this car? Or will you need to change your driving style for this car? Yuki responds, no, the driving style that I've got has what's gotten me into this position, and it has allowed me to be able to wear the Red Bull badge on my shirt. I do not need to change my driving style. And I called that out. I thought, guys, that's got to be the worst mentality that you could possibly bring into the RB21. The correct answer and the correct mentality surely must be, you know what? I don't know. I haven't driven this car before. I've heard it's pretty tricky. I've heard it's pretty mercurial. I've done a few laps on the sim. Look, I'm going to wait and see how I get on. I'm going to try to keep my driving style if I can. But look, if it means that I need to make some adjustments to my game and that is what's required to get the best out of the car, then sure, hey, I'm going to put my hands up and make those changes. That's what's going to have to be done. I think that was the correct mentality to bring in. And Yuki Tsunoda keeping his driving style, not being willing to change, adapt, adjust. Well, how did that work out for you? You are half a second off and 12 positions. And let's just read them out. Between Verstappen and Tsunoda was Piastri, was Leclerc, was Hamilton, was Antonelli, was Behrman, was Hadjar, was Albon, was Gasly, was Sainz, was Alonso, and was Liam Lawson. Yuki Tsunoda, your move, sir. I think you're going to need to just look, I don't want to come down hard on the driving per se, because that's another story. The mentality you bring in should never be the wrong one, particularly given the history of the Red Bull. Like, at least come in with an open mind and ability to learn. I'm not sure how it's all worked out at this point. My data is the data that you guys have as well. But the mentality, like, if I was coaching Yuki, I wouldn't be having any of it. So then what was it with the driving style? Well, we only jumped on board with him through turn 1 and I had a look at it. He turns into turn 1 and the rear steps away from him. Really interesting because he's got more rear wing than Max Verstappen. And, you know, how is it possible that the rear is coming around for him in turn 1 in a high speed, fully loaded corner? Let me show you guys on the map where we're talking about here. It's turn 2, sorry. And it's got 150 here as being the minimum speed. We'll bring up the telemetry and see what the minimum speed is here. But this is a rear wing corner, right? The rear wing's working really hard through here. So if Yuki's running more rear, it would surprise me that he's lost the rear. When we jumped on board with Yuki, one thing I noticed was he doesn't touch any of the tools. He doesn't touch the diff. He doesn't touch the brake balance, at least brake balance, let alone engine braking. And this is a track I think that you need to be on top of that. You got to change that corner to corner. The differential setup that you have in the Esses, for example, is not the diff setup that you're going to want to have for the hairpin, which we know is a struggle to get into there. Particularly, you've got wind coming across the track. If I just draw the direction of wind today, it was like that, kind of like that way, coming across the track this way. So into turn 2 it was a problem, into the S's it was a problem as well, and into Degner 1, which coming across this way, again it was a problem. So like it was moving between there and there. So yeah, you want to be making those adjustments surely across the lap. So look, I think before looking technically at Yuki's brake, throttle and steering inputs, I think it's all here. Come in with the right mentality, make the right adjustments, get the car work, learn the car, make the changes. I think it's all of that. But look, he'll learn, hopefully, and just come in. I'd like to see him come in a little bit more relaxed and with a more professional mindset. You guys let me know if I'm being too harsh, but look, that's what I heard in the Thursday press conference. I was absolutely shocked. If you saw the Thursday live stream that I did, I called it out then. I'm like, that's destined to fail. Like you just can't wear the same outfit and just expect it to work in rain and in 40 degrees. You're going to have to change your clothes. You know, it's just literally, it's like that. You've got to dress for the conditions, and you've got to change your driving style for the car that you're in. Surely, no? But you guys let me know if you think I'm being hard there. Let me know in the comments. I'll be keen to hear what you guys think about Yuki's hard line on not changing his driving style for the Red Bull. Now, I wanted to call out to you guys two really technical things on this track that I saw in the Q2 session. The first was the hairpin. I saw Max go really wide at the hairpin, and I just thought I'd give you an insight into why that would be. So Max taking this really wide line around the outside of the hairpin. Let me just draw that out for you here and explain to you what's going on, why the drivers are all running so deep into the hairpin. So what's happening is, if I just draw the racing line in red, they're coming through here, and you've got to turn through this curvature that is turn 10 on the track map, 10 being here, 11 being here. And the drivers aren't comfortable braking and turning. If they do brake at this point, which is where they need to be braking for the corner, then they're going to lock up, the unloaded right front tire. So what they're preferring to do is come through here, outbrake themselves, but at least brake with the steering wheel straight, and then limit the chance of a lockup. And then it means that they're kind of running out wide here. So that's the compromise that drivers are trying to make. If it were me, I'd be testing both. I'd be testing braking softer and gentler at this line here in red. Obviously you're turning, so I'd be trying it. Turning, braking at the same time, pull back with the gears, brake balance rearwards, migrate forwards. I'd try that as like, you know, a test A. And then I'd say, okay, fine, let's run through here, brake balance forwards, less engine braking, get rid of the brake migration, and just do what they've all been doing. And then obviously overshoot the corner and try with the steering wheel straight and brake here. So that's why the guys are taking the wide line, is because they're not comfortable braking and turning where they want to be. So it's a curved braking zone, and you're looking for straight line braking, of course. But, you know, I'm not sure which is the best approach. But I'd be recommending that they try two different braking points and two different braking setups into the turn 11 hairpin. One other thing I wanted to call out to you guys in this Q2 session, both Ferrari drivers really made a meal of the first sector, and I'm going to tell you where it went wrong exactly for them. And it was the entry into 5. So it was here. So if I just draw on the map, I'm just going to copy 3, 4, and 5. It goes like this, and like this, I guess. Hopefully, I'm not the best drawer. The problem I saw was here. And both the Ferrari drivers, they're coming through the right-hander, of 4. This is 4. Hit the apex, come through the right-hander, and they're getting stuck here. They're getting pinched on the entry to the left-hander that is 5. So they're finding themselves stuck here. And what the best drivers were doing, and I saw George do this really nicely, was yes, hit the apex of 4, but really come through mid-track. And that's the whole flat car philosophy. It's the whole keep the corners all open. So keep the entries to the corners all open, all available. You've got a more obedient, more compliant car on the direction change. George Russell did that beautifully in Q2. And like I say, both the Ferrari drivers really running themselves out of road on the entry into turn 5, which means if I just draw it on the track map here, I'll zoom in actually. That's tricky to explain. Here we go. So yeah, coming through here, this is the problem. The Ferrari drivers are finding themselves pinched here on the entry to 5. And what you want to do, what I saw George do excellent, was follow this whole thing, but just allow a bit of breathing room. And that's the difference there. It's the entry to 5. And that's really because 5 is the meat. It's really the meat inside the sandwich of all of the S's. 6 and 7 over here, they're like, you got more time between those corners, and 3 and 4 are pretty fast. 5 is the crunch point really, and it's the entry to 5 where I think George was gaining the most time. If we can have a look at the telemetry, I'd like to have a look and try to verify Let's do that. Let's try to verify exactly what I'm saying against the telemetry now. So I've got Russell's 27.4 and I've got Leclerc's 27.6. If you look at the track dominance, guys, you see this here? This aqua here, that's the left-hander of turn 5. Exactly what I was talking about. And that's where I think some of the lap time was being lost. Let's put our click there. Yeah, look at that. Starting to come up after that. So where does the delta really go up? Okay, it's the final part there. So this speed just here, yeah, it's there. It's just that difference in speed. I'm just going to zoom in on that because that's what I saw from the eye. And this is the speed here. If I just click that, that's on the exit of turn 5. So that's where I think George was getting the upper hand. And it just means that everything after that is a lot better. So interesting that that showed up on the telemetry. Let's see if we can have a quick look at Hamilton as well and get one of his 27.5s or 6s. I think it was this one. And see if the same sort of thing was happening. Yeah, again, so we've got turn 5 here is highlighted in aqua, which means in the favor of George Russell. Again, you see more speed from George carried into turn 5 and out of turn 5 as well. So there you go, guys. I thought I'd just call that out. It's something I saw on the TV, and just bringing you back to the whiteboard. It's the green versus the red situation where I saw both Ferrari drivers pinched on the entry into turn 5. While we're at telemetry, let's have a look at Verstappen versus Tsunoda and see what went wrong in Q2. So here we go. Where's the lap time being won and lost? What's going on? So whenever the lap time goes up, that is in Verstappen's favor. Interesting. Down the straight. Yeah, you see how when we're looking at the delta, all of these diagonal lines, that's Max has got less rear wing. So all the way down to 130R, Max is just cleaning it, even on the way to the final, even on the way to the start finish line. Where's this? I think it's on the way to Degner 1, out of their hairpin, for example. Max is literally just cleaning up in terms of better exits and just maintaining better speed all the way down. So there aren't many places where Yuki's finding some time. I'd argue here, it's the delta started to drop a little bit. Where's this? This is through the second Degner and breaking into the hairpin. Okay, so that's where Yuki was doing a better job than Max. We've got Yuki in white. It's just breaking later into the hairpin. But that's about it. For the rest of it, it's just Max with that rear wing just cleaning up. Q3, one of the early insights that I could give you guys is Hamilton was very angry. I think it was after his first run. We cut to him and he goes like this, like, come on, like, and I was trying to work out what's he saying. And I think that the guys weren't putting the TV in front of him in his garage. And that's a bit of frustration from Lewis there, because up to this point, he's been super cool. Like, it's our first race together. We're still learning how everything works. And, and this is a long-term approach for me and my engineer. But then we see that, and I'm wondering how this would be behind the curtains at Ferrari. Surely Hamilton's saying, come on, guys, let's get it together, race operations. So I guess they wheeled Hamilton back into the garage, and he's like, mate, get the TV over here straight away. I'm about to go out for my final run in Q3. I need to know what's going on. So it's just little things like that. But it was a frustrating gesture by Hamilton. That's an insight into his mentality, I think, and how he's feeling there at Ferrari at the moment. Probably a little bit frustrated, as we all are, right? The other insight that I can give you guys, and when they were interviewed after the Q3 laps, Lando says, look, that's all I had. I gave it everything and it just wasn't quick enough. And then Oscar Piastri said, the lap didn't really come together as I would have liked, suggesting that there was a little bit more lap time in Oscar's lap. I think Oscar was the one to under-deliver here. I think his car, and he had the ability to be on pole. So disappointing if you're an Oscar fan. Disappointing if you're a McLaren fan as well. I think those guys under-delivered in Q3. Let's take a look at the Q3 results then. And Verstappen, no purples, but purple in terms of lap time. So interesting, 300. Again, he's still carrying a top speed deficit. He's just done a mega job. Super close and tight at the top between the McLaren guys. Like, there's nothing in it at all. And again, a good call out with regards to Antonelli closing that gap and starting on the first, second, third row alongside his teammate George Russell. Another good call out for Hadjar We jumped on board with him in Q2 in China. That's the first time I've seen him turn the steering wheel. I was really happy with what I saw. He turned the steering wheel beautifully and progressively into the double apex in China. And I haven't seen anything else, but some good lap times here. This is good. This is Mercedes pace from Isaac Hadjar. And he was struggling the whole session as well with the seat. So this is a significant call out and a good job by Isaac Hadjar. Hamilton struggling, obviously the frustration. Let's take a look at his telemetry just after we talk about Albon and Behrman. Good job by both those guys in obviously not the best cars as well. So yeah, great job by Behrman and Albon to get their cars, dragging them into Q3. Let's have a look at Hamilton, Leclerc and see where the difference was in terms of their lap times. Okay, so it's Leclerc's 27.299, Hamilton in white 27.6. Track dominance, what can we see here? Leclerc quicker in the first part of the S's, Hamilton quicker in the second part of the S's. We see a little bit here and there. Second part of Spoon looks like where it was done, and the chicane as well. So here we go, it's here. Where's that? Bang, Spoon. Okay, so look, they're pretty close on the entry to Spoon, almost equal on the delta. 0.074 seconds. That is less than a tenth. And that's 700ths of a second. And then that's where Hamilton got caned in the second part of Spoon. So yeah, the entry to Spoon, sorry, for some reason. I guess Hamilton maybe had a slide here, I guess, a correction on the entry to Spoon curve. But it looks like thereafter it's just ruined his corner. And that looks pretty obvious and pretty evident as to where the lap time was won and lost with the Ferrari drivers. So looking ahead to the race, if you guys saw the introduction to my live stream on Thursday, you would have seen how many world champions have won at Suzuka. It's pretty crazy. You've got Hakkinen, 98-99, Raikkonen won it in 05, Alonso won it in 06, Rosberg won it in 2016, Hamilton won it in 14, 15, 17 and 18, Schumacher won it in like 2000, 2001, 2, 3, 4, 5, somewhere through there. Senna won it in 88 and 90. It's like, have a look at the Thursday preview show, the introduction to that show. It's pretty crazy. And I just made the point that like whoever gets it done here in Suzuka, it's like a champion worthy track and drive. And what do you know? We got Max Verstappen on pole. It's just the cream always rises to the top, doesn't it? And he's definitely outperforming that car and making a case for greatest of all time conversations and discussions. Not to mention we've got rain and fire potentially on the way tomorrow. It's going to rain tonight, Saturday night into tomorrow morning. So that might wash away all of the rubber on the track. So even if it does start dry, there's going to be different track conditions in terms of a green track. And then we've got the fire to keep in mind as well. If that happens on lap 10, lap 15, lap 25, how's that going to affect and impact strategy? That's something I'm looking forward to, or looking out for, sorry, in the race tomorrow. I'm not looking forward to fire, looking out for how that impacts the race strategy tomorrow. Thanks for watching, guys. I hope you learned something from this video. On your way out, please drop me a comment. It helps the video and channel move forward. Give the video a thumbs up and subscribe to this channel for more racing analysis moving forward. Thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next one.